George R. Hill, Dean of College of Mines and Mineral Industries, Chemtech, made a statement in 1972. A rather startling and serendipitous discovery resulted. These observations, he said, suggest that in their formation, high coal ranks were probably subjected to high temperature, top of the line coal, subjected to high temperature at some stage in their history. A possible mechanism for formation of these high rank coals could have been a short time, rapid heating event, like 6 hours. Wow. By short time, he relates in the article, he's talking about 6 hours. With temperature and pressure, you can get coal formed from wood in just a few hours, and it doesn't happen slowly. Of course, you study the strata, the environment in which coal is formed, and you would learn that from the trees and from minute details in beautifully preserved fossils. This same kind of picture is seen when we experiment with the formation of oil. Notice the quotation from the Sentinel Star down in Orlando, Florida, back in 1982, February 26. And we're doing this at Texas A&M, by the way. And by this was reporting from an experiment in London where we are told British scientists claim to have invented a way to turn household garbage into oil suitable for home heating or power plant use. And we are told here that we are doing in 10 minutes what it has taken nature 150 million years to do, said Noel McAuliffe from Manchester University at his Institute of Science and Technology. That's not a scientific statement, because you can't observe something over 150 years and report what you've observed. You're not that old. The article goes on to say that the coal is comparable in quality to Middle Eastern crude. 10 minutes, but it took nature 150 million years. You think, who's smarter? Of course, nobody sat around and watched it happen. And when we look at the environment in which we find it, we find beautifully preserved large fossils that demand a rapid burial. And we know when we do observe it forming that it happens rapidly. What's the most scientific explanation for its formation? Billions of years or just a short event? Well, a short event is what we observe. That's what science is supposed to be about, observing. Now we have ore and mineral deposits. What do you think? Same conclusion as oil and coal? Here we are. Ores of all kinds may be found in rocks of all geologic ages, nearly always associated with igneous intrusions. Thus, historical geology can be of no real aid in locating such deposits. You can't accumulate, well, it should be in this particular strata. It's every strata. Neither is the origin of ore bodies any better understood than the origin of petroleum deposits. The formation of ore deposits is seemingly a phenomenon that occurred in the past, independently of the particular geological stratum and by means of agencies. And it's a case-for-case basis as you examine it, which most likely were catastrophic in character, associated with volcanism. I typed all of these quotations in there by myself. Should have learned how to type. Mineralization is not a rare phenomenon nor a vagary of nature, as is sometimes assumed, but is instead a common geological process, almost invariably accompanying volcanic activity. As a result, as a final phase thereof, while it is probably an attendant feature of most igneous intrusions within the uppermost 4 miles of the Earth's crust. Walker and Walker in their article. It was seen that its ore formation's universality in both geographical location and supposed geologic time, its almost invariable association with igneous activity, cataclysmic, and not uniformitarianism long periods of time, and its apparently catastrophic manner of deposition, that's what volcanoes do, are most easily visualized in our basic deluge framework. Volcanoes, earthquake, rainfall, water up, water down, the whole world, all these violent events all over the world. Quickly, things are done, and then redone, and redone, and redone. No particular order of things. You can't figure it out because it's always different everywhere else. So, during the flood, as we have seen, volcanic activity of all sorts continued globally during most of the flood period, and therefore, volcanic rocks are now found throughout the world. Hello? Carried by the water, and there throughout the geologic column. Formation of mineral deposits of great extent and variety was undoubtedly possible during the flood and can best be understood in this context. Of course, the very extensive Precambrian ores may well be attributed to the creation period itself in many cases. Although there is much yet to be learned from the Earth's great oil and mineral deposits, it is surely obvious that the evolutionary concept of historical geology is of little practical utility in their discovery and exploitation. Again, they don't bother. The oil exploration doesn't bother following the college textbooks on geology. They look for the signs after haphazard drilling, finding these little deposits here and there, porous strata, and then we find a much less dense area under the Earth's surface. That means not rock, maybe soil, maybe oil, maybe water. You find that, now you start exploring. We don't know what. Well, wait a minute. What rock strata are we looking at? You're not. Such as is known about the character of these deposits and their formation fits equally well or better into the framework of biblical geology. It simply is incorrect to assert that such success as has been attained by the disciplines of petroleum and economic geology is evidence of the validity of orthodox historical geology. They don't even bother following it. Like I said, I had a conversation with an oil-field exploration geologist. He said, we don't bother with any of that. We left that in the college. We have certain practical measures, and it's all guesswork. We find a cavern down below, and it's kind of like shallow in depth. We find some water there. Find a little bit droplets of oil here or there, because a lot of times the oil is lighter than the oil, than the water. The water deposits below it, and we maybe have the oil above it, and look for another deposit. And then you find a porous stratum, and then one that isn't porous. Then you find your oil. But that's all haphazard and guesswork. Ripples in the strata. Donor pattern in tape 1, perhaps the most common sedimentary feature in rocks in the layers, involves what are known as the ripple marks. And in this illustration, we see a picture that I took down here at Junction, Texas. It looks like what you would see in the bottom of a stream of water running over loose sediment. If you had concrete poured, which is basically what you have with limestone, and then a stream running over the top of it, it might leave features like this. And they might be preserved in the limestone or in the concrete if it happened rapidly. But how do you get such ephemeral structures formed if it takes millions and millions of years to form these layers? When you look at the fossils and you look at the rocks, it should be obvious to the people that will think that this has to be a rapid process. I was making a lecture similar to this down at Texas A&M when one of the professors interrupted and said, "We know all of this. We know that the rocks themselves form rapidly, but the time is in between the rocks." You ever try to look between rocks? There's nothing there. How do you even make a statement like that? This is what you are teaching our students. I said, well, thank you. I wish that were put in the textbooks, however, because the textbooks often leave the impression that it takes many, many years to form the layers. But you're saying that the rocks themselves form rapidly. And then you wait many, many years. For the rock above it, it's like a 1/16 of an inch or a 32nd of an inch. That took millions of years. Why did the rock just fall in place? Didn't take millions of years. It took a millisecond. Well, of course, we can see this and prove this. The internal evidence in the strata demonstrate that. Well, where do you get the evidence for time? He said, well, that's in between the rocks. I said, you mean where there is no evidence? And he just sort of cleared his throat and sat down. He's been through that before, Dr. Patton. Well, that's exactly where the evidence is, where it isn't. In the cracks, in between. That's the evidence for time, and it is non-existing evidence. Dr. Patton, in his notes, along with this, I took the notes and matched it up to the subject matter in his videotape. The chief significance of ripple lamination in the geologic record is that it is an indicator of environments involving large and rapid sand accumulation, areas where addition of new sand normally is at a slow rate, have little chance of developing into superimposed ripple lamination. In contrast, areas in which the sand accumulates periodically but rapidly, as in river flood plains, where sand-laden waters of strong floods suddenly lose velocity and are very favorable for building up ripple laminated deposits. There you go. Edwin McKee, Primary Sedimentary Structures and Their Hydrodynamic Interpretation. He gives so many great references. All right, now we're to a new page. K33.htm is the file name. Paleontology, the study of fossils relative to the origin of life, points to a worldwide flood. Wow. Introduction. Marvin L. Lubenow states in Bones of Contention, marvelous book on all levels, talks about human remains, first man, caveman, all these things, and gives you a good perspective on this. The survival of the fittest has a flop side. It is the death of the less fit. For evolution to proceed, it is as essential that the less fit die as it is that the more fit survive. If the unfit survived indefinitely, they would continue to infect the fit with their less fit genes. The result is that the more fit genes would be diluted and compromised by the less fit genes. Kind of elementary logic, and evolution could not take place. The concept of evolution demands death. Death is thus as natural to evolution as it is foreign to biblical creation. Evolution, death. The Bible, eternal life. The Bible teaches that death is a foreigner, a condition superimposed upon humans and nature after creation. Death is an enemy. Christ has conquered it, and he will eventually destroy it. Their respective attitudes toward death reveal how many light years separate the concept of evolution from biblical creationism. It is possible to determine whether the concept of human evolution is a scientific theory or a philosophy. If it is a scientific theory, it must be capable of being falsified. Observe, repeat, falsify. Since human evolution is alleged to be an historic process, the evidence for it, or the falsification of it, must come from the fossil record. For instance, if Homo erectus people persisted long after they should have died out or changed into Homo sapiens, the concept of human evolution would be falsified. If one could show that fossils indistinguishable from modern humans existed long before they were supposed to exist, according to the process of evolution, this also would falsify the concept. If human evolution is truly a scientific theory, the fossil record shows that it has been falsified. The fact that the evidence is ignored or disguised indicates that the concept of human evolution is a philosophy that is perpetuated in spite of and independent of the facts of the human fossil record. It may, of course, be granted that the principle is, how come we have apes? How come they didn't go away? Because they're contaminating our gene structure. It may, of course, be granted that the principle of stratigraphic correlation, i.e., geologic timetable based on a presupposed idea of when living things once lived and then dating the rock formations that the fossil of those once alive living things are contained in, according to those presuppositions. Circular reasoning. It may, of course, be granted that the principle of